Today we will be presenting our Power BI final project. Our final project will be on the Housing Price Index. We'll be including myself, Zuair Wari, alongside,
Cyril Mahop.
and
Jeffrey Vo.
next slide. So what is the Housing Price Index? The House Price Index, otherwise known as HPI, is a broad measure of the movement of single-family property prices in the United States. Aside from serving as an indicator of house price trends, it also functions as an analytical tool for estimating changes in the rates of mortgage defaults, prepayments, and housing affordability. Next slide. So, as we see here in front of us, we have a tree map displaying the housing index by state. And if we look at the top left corner, we have Washington, D.C., and on the bottom right corner, we have Michigan. So DC being at the top left-hand corner indicates that it has a higher housing price index, or the highest out of all of these states. And Michigan being on the bottom right corner, it indicates that it has the lowest housing index by state. If we look at the left-hand column, we have Washington, D.C., Hawaii, North Dakota, Florida, Maryland, California, and Wyoming. Being on the left-hand side column, it indicates that all of these states are on the higher end of the housing price index. Now, during this project, we will be mainly focusing on Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia. Next slide.
Here we have the sum of housing index by state in the form of a bar chart. On the left side, we have the states with the highest sum, and on the right side, we have the states with the lowest sum. Similarly, with the other graph, we could see DC with the most at over 80K, and on the bottom, we have Michigan with over 40K. So this graph is a little different from the other one. It visually represents, instead of by sizes, from left to right in value. So next slide. Here we have the sum of housing index by state in the form of a pie chart. So same thing as the other two charts, we have DC with 86.97K, and we have Michigan with 49.93K. This chart is a little bit more special though. Not only does it show the values of the sum, but it shows the percentage that the sum holds in the entire United States. Here we just put in a graph on the left to show the population of the United States in 2013. So when comparing these two, we saw a trend where the darker states were closer to the DMV, which meant those DMV areas had a larger population per square mile. So looking at the two, we might say the population might have caused the housing index price to rise based on the location. So moving on to the next slide.
Sum of housing index by year in the United States line chart. As you can see in the picture, there's a lady sitting in a house, housing market, interest rate, the Fed. Is the US housing market headed for a crash? It all depends on how rates on how high rates go, mortgage veterans say. You can see on the graph how from 1975 to 2022, the graph start low and start increasing. Next slide.
So here we have the sum of housing index by year in form of a line chart. So we went with the DMV area to do our research. So the first area we did was DC. DC, according to the chart, is ranked number one in sum of housing indexed at 86,970.67, which represents 2.83% of the United States. We used a picture to represent the neighborhoods in DC, and now looking at the chart, we could see It was under 1,000 all the way to 2000. And then after the 2000s to 2008, right before the crash happened, it reached right under 3K. It dropped around 2.5K in 2010 from 2008. And then it found its way all the way back up to near 5K in 2022.
Sum of housing index by year, line chart Maryland. Maryland is ranked 5th in sum of housing index at 66,151.01, which represents 2.18% of the United States. As you can see, a family home house in Maryland, a beautiful family home house picture in Maryland. As you can see in the graph start lower in the 1970s and start increasing in up to 2022, which is the current year. It started like in the 70s, from the 70s up to 2080, it started increasing up to 500 and then decrease in 82 and then increase back in 1990 and then it remained constant in 1999 and then increase up to 2010 and then decrease up to 2020 and then went back up into 2022. Next slide.
And lastly, we have Virginia, and more specifically, the sum of housing index by year using a line chart in Virginia. Virginia is ranked number 10 in the sum of housing index at 65,183.63, which represents 2.12% of the country. As we can see below, it's just an average neighborhood in Virginia. And as we move on to the line graph, we can see a similar trend to DC and Maryland. It looks like it's a steady rise going up into the 2000s. We've got a boom between 2000 and 2008, leading to the market crash, which was very devastating and resulted in a decline in the line graph between 2008 and 2010. Once reaching 2010, 2011, you can see that the market picked back up and the housing index rose and is still rising to this day. And that concludes our project. Thank you.
Thank you.